Welcome back to Clinical Craft. In this video, we'll explore how our bodies manage heat and what actually happens when we run a fever. Your brain has built-in smart thermostat which is located in the tiny area known as hypothalamus, more specifically in the preoptic anterior and the posterior hypothalamus. Its function is to keep your body at a steady temperature by balancing heat gain and the heat loss. When you're too cold, hypothalamus triggers its heat gain function. As a result, you shiver and your blood vessels tighten, that is, vasoconstriction occurs to keep warm inside. When you're too hot, it triggers your heat loss through sweating and widening of the blood vessels, that is, vasodilation. Now, hypothalamus also has its set point where pyrogens reset its threshold, triggering the febrile response. We can measure temperature in two ways, that is core temperature and the peripheral temperature. Core temperature specifically means the heat of the internal organs, that is, for example, brain and heart, which is stable and accurate, whereas peripheral temperature is which we feel on our skin. It changes easily based on the weather around you. As core temperature mainly represents your thermal or the metabolic stress, peripheral temperature indicates perfusion and the heat loss. Common sites for the core temperature are the rectal, tympanic, esophageal, whereas common sites for the peripheral temperature is axillary and the skin probes. Further moving on to the definition, let's see what actually fever or pyrexia means. Fever isn't just being hot, it is the deliberate shift by your brain. Normally, your thermostat is set to about 37 degrees Celsius, but when your body detects infection, it releases special kind of messengers known as cytokines, that is interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and TNF alpha. These messengers tells hypothalamus to turn up the dial. Once the set point is moved higher, your body thinks its correct temperature is too low. As a result, you shiver and get chills even when your temperature is rising. It is important to remember fever isn't your enemy but a protective response. Now that we have understand how brain acts as a thermostat, let's see normal temperature ranges. Did you know your body temperature isn't same all the day? It actually follows a circadian rhythm. It means your body temperature naturally lowest in the morning and highest in the evening. That is normal variation of zero point 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius over the body temperature. This small wave is controlled by specific part of your brain called as suprachiasmatic nuclei which is present in the anterior hypothalamus. While looking at numbers, we generally categorize them into levels. A normal temperature is usually around 37 degrees Celsius. Once you cross that, we move into the mild, moderate, or the high grade of fevers. If temperature goes above 41 degrees Celsius, we call it hyperpyrexia, which is a medical emergency. Now let's see why your body triggers fever. We usually think the etiology of infection like bacterial, viral, fungal, etc. But there are other causes too. Fever can be caused by autoimmune issues where body attack itself or by the neoplastic causes like certain cancers. Even physical trauma like crush injury or any environmental heat can spike your temperature. Fever acts as a general alarm system. It tells something is wrong with the body, but we have to play detective to find out the cause of an infection. We need to remember where we measure temperature matters as much as reading itself. Different parts of body give slightly different results. As for the rectal, it is the gold standard for the core temperature, most accurate reflection of your core internal heat, usually about zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius more than the oral reading. Next is the oral, which is our baseline. It is what we use most commonly in our clinics. Third one is the axillary, which is least invasive but less accurate. It is usually zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius less than the oral reading. Last one is the tympanic, which is very quick, which reflects the temperature of the blood supply near the brain. So, how to demonstrate temperature? For the oral, place the thermometer probe under the tongue. Ask the patient to keep their lips closed and breathe through their nose. Now, you need to remember one thing that always wait for 20 to 30 minutes if the patient has just finished eating something hot or cold or have been smoking, otherwise, the reading would be wrong. Next one is the rectal, which is often used for the infants when oral is impossible. Patient should lie in the Sims position, that is, lying on the bed with one knee bent. Use water soluble lubricant and gently insert the tip. Never force it. Withdrawing too early or not using enough lubricant can hurt the patient. Third one is the auxiliary, simple but least accurate method. Make sure the armpit of the patient is dry. Place the probe against the skin and ask the patient to press firmly their arm against the chest. If probe touches clothing or sweaty armpit, false result could be there. Last one is the tympanic, which measures infrared heat directly from the eardrum. Fast because ear is close to a brain thermostat. To do it right, ensure that the sensor aims directly at the eardrum, not just the side of the ear canal. Now, in the next session, we'll see examiner's favorite topic. First one is the patterns of fever. How fever behaves over 24 hours, which we need to know to help to diagnose the cause. First one is the continuous fever. Doesn't fluctuate more than 1 degree Celsius or 1.5 degree Fahrenheit in 24 hours and never touches the baseline, which is seen in lobar pneumonia, typhoid fever, acute bacterial meningitis, acute rheumatic fever, etc. Next is the remittent fever. Here, temperatures goes up and down significantly but never touches the baseline. That is, fluctuates more than 2 degrees Celsius or 3 degree Fahrenheit in 24 hours, which is commonly seen in amoebic liver abscess, enteric fever in the third week, acute bronchopneumonia, acute tonsillitis, etc. Next is an intermittent fever, which presents only for several hours a day and always touches the baseline, which is seen in malaria, Kala Azar, pyogenic abscess, septicemia, tuberculosis, etc. Last one is the relapsing fever. Here, patient has several days of no fever at all, then fever relapses or comes back to normal. That is, recurring febrile episodes separated by periods of low grade fever or no fever, which can be seen in malaria, Borrelia, rat bite fever, cyclic neutropenia, etc. Next topic is the pyrexia of unknown origin. Sometimes we find a fever but can't immediate figure out why it is. So here is the classical definition of pyrexia of unknown origin. Temperature should be more than 38.3 degrees Celsius or 101 degree Fahrenheit on several occasions. A duration of fever is more than 3 weeks. Failure to reach the provisional diagnosis after 1 week of inpatient investigations on several occasions. Now, there is also a modified definition of it, that is, fever more than 101 degree Fahrenheit on at least 2 occasions, duration of illness more than equal to 3 weeks, no known immunocompromised state, the diagnosis still remain uncertain after thorough history, taking physical examination and some obligatory investigations. Moving to the next is the type of pyrexia of unknown origin, which is given by Durek and the Streak. First one is the classical pyrexia of unknown origin. Can be seen in the hidden infection, obscure malignancy, collagen vascular diseases, etc. Second one is the nosocomial pyrexia of unknown origin. Fever that starts while the patient is still already there in the hospital. Third one is the neutropenic pyrexia of unknown origin. Here, the fever in the patients with low immunity. And fourth one is the HIV associated pyrexia of unknown origin. Now, the diseases which initially include pyrexia of unknown origin are the lymphomas, leukemias, multiple myelomas, collagen vascular diseases, tuberculosis, factitious fever, drug fever, use of immunosuppressive drugs, etc. Now that we have learned that the heart normally speeds up when we have a fever, but sometimes body doesn't follow 10 beats per minute increase rule, and this is known as dissociation. Now the rule states that pulse increases by 10 beats per minute for every 1 degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature in adults, and in children it may be up to 12 to 15 beats per minute. But the two conditions which doesn't follow this rule is the relative bradycardia and the relative tachycardia. Relative bradycardia is increase in pulse rate less than 10 beats per minute with per degree Fahrenheit rise of temperature. For example, when temperature is increased by 2 degree Fahrenheit, the pulse rate will be about 80 beats per minute, which actually should be 92 beats per minute. It can be seen in any viral fever, typhoid fever, leishmaniasis, brucellosis, drug fever, etc. Next is the relative tachycardia. It is the increase in pulse rate more than 10 beats per minute with per degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature. For example, When the temperature is increased by 3 degree Fahrenheit, the pulse rate will be about 120 beats per minute, which actually should be 102 beats per minute. It can be seen in acute rheumatic carditis, tuberculosis, septic shock, diphtheric myocarditis. Next topic is the temperature emergencies: hyperpyrexia, hypothermia, and hypothermia. Hyperpyrexia is an extreme elevation in the body temperature considered a very high fever, which is more than 41 degrees Celsius or more than 106 degree Fahrenheit. Here, the hypothalamic set point is elevated and the primary mechanism is of severe infection or CNS hemorrhage or sepsis. Here, sweating persists until dehydration occurs. Next one is the hypothermia, where very high temperature without any change in hypothalamic set point. There is uncontrolled rise in very high temperature that beats the body's ability to dissipate heat, more than 37.8 degrees Celsius, but varies by cause. Here, primary mechanism is the heat stroke, drug reaction, or metabolic dysfunction. Sweating is often absent in heat stroke, and skin is hot and dry. Last one is the hypothermia. Here, the dangerous drop in the body temperature due to prolonged exposure to cold, which is less than 35 degrees Celsius. Here, the hypothalamic set point is unchanged. Body tries to warm but loses heat too fast. In hypothermia, the primary mechanism is due to environmental exposure or metabolic failure. Now, let's look further towards the causes of these emergency. Causes of hyperpyrexia are the malaria, septicemia, encephalitis, spontaneous hemorrhage, lobar pneumonia, heat stroke, etc. As for the causes of hypothermia, being always stuck in the cold, it can also be caused by other medical conditions like hypoglycemia, alcoholic intoxication, myxedema coma, prolonged exposure to cold, enteric fever, near drowning, etc. Now, examiners often ask the difference between chills and rigors. So, basically, chills is just a feeling of being cold. Your body is trying to reach a new, higher set point, so you feel chilly and might shiver slightly. Whereas, rigors is the physiological emergency, which involve intense, uncontrollable muscle contraction and teeth chattering. It is the body's way of rapidly generated heat and it usually signals very high fever and a serious infection in the bloodstream. When fever starts and goes away, we call it effervescence or fever. It happens only in two ways, followed by crisis and followed by lysis. When a raised temperature falls to normal or subnormal level very quickly within 6 to 12 hours, it is associated with severe sweating. It is known as fall by crisis, which can be seen in acute lobar pneumonia, enteric fever, which is complicated by the intestinal perforation or hemorrhage, adrenal crisis, septicemic shock, etc. Whereas fall by lysis is when the temperature falls gradually in steps over several days, which is seen in uncomplicated enteric fever, rheumatic fever, acute bronchopneumonia. At last, some of the name fevers which examiners may ask, please do memorize it. Last one, finally, we have the fevers that aren't caused by common pathogens. Drug fever and the aseptic fever. Drug fever is the fever that develops because of medication and resolves when the medication is stopped. Common drugs include penicillin, sulfonamides, barbiturates, rifampicin, etc., which is fever without infection due to inflammation or the tissue death, which can be seen in heat stroke, collagen vascular diseases, spontaneous hemorrhage, thyroid storm, etc. At last, here's the examiner's favorite topic, fever with rash, with a mnemonic given below. Now, following are the Viva questions for your reference. At last, mastering these details doesn't just help you to pass your exams, but it also helps you to spot dangerous patterns in your patient before they become emergencies. Keep practicing your history taking and good luck with your clinical postings.